Well, hello, sports fans. It's Larry Eder with Socialing the Distance, your favorite program. And this week we have a real treat. Mark Munro, he's the interim CEO at UK Athletics. I believe that he and Mr. Beattie have really put UK Athletics back on the right path for all of you track fans in the UK and across the pond. Mark, great to see you.
Yeah, Larry, great to be on the show, I guess, if that's what you call it. So thanks for having me.
No problem. And I've been to your fair city, Edinburgh, for cross-country events. Then I was in 2014, I was in Glasgow at the Commonwealth Games, and Mr. Stuart Weir, who you know, and I convinced 3 Scottish riders that I was petitioning for the U.S. to be added back into the Commonwealth Games. And people actually bought it for a little bit, but, you know, you got to have a little fun. You know,
listen, we're always looking for host venues for the Commonwealth Games, so who knows what the future holds in that one. So let's see.
There you go. I did have 18 straight days with a dish with haggis each day, and wrote about that for over here. And my American friends thought it was quite amusing. So,
yeah, so that's impressive going, to be fair.
Yes, yes. So you've had I think I'm going to start from the beginning. Your federation is set up a little different than USA Track and Field over here. So your country federation is UK Athletics, correct?
Yes.
And then you have Welsh Athletics, Scottish Athletics, British Athletics, and is English Athletics part of that as well?
So we've got the 4, Larry. We've got England Athletics, Welsh Athletics, Scottish Athletics, and then Athletics Northern Ireland, which obviously make up the UK. So the way it works, it is very unique amongst other nations. And when we kind of compare and contrast notes with our counterparts across the various ponds, it's always an interesting discussion. So UK Athletics are the custodians of the rules of the sport in the UK. And we have the operational responsibility for areas like safeguarding and clean athletics. We deal in performance, so GB and Northern Ireland teams for international competition. We have a world-class performance program that's very much around producing more finalists and medalists. And we have a major events program, so from UK championship level up into international level. The home countries, as we refer to them, home country athletics federations, are independent organisations in their own right. They are members of UK Athletics, as are a few other rules, but they operate autonomously in many respects, and their funding systems are different. And we have, obviously, within the UK, we have devolved governments in Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland. So the 4 home countries are funded differently, and also they are responsible, obviously, around the kind of Commonwealth Games. So the home countries are the member federations, so they have the athlete members, the club members. They put on, support local competition through to home country national level competition. UK Athletics takes in above that. So there are a number of areas where we link, and talent into performance, coach development, officials development, and UK Athletics obviously has that kind of oversight, that overview of what's happening across the sport. But the home countries are very much responsible for their members in terms of athletes and clubs. So it's complex if you're not from the UK. There's a lot of grey areas in terms of some areas we work together on, some we're completely separate entities on. So, but we're all working together, and I think it was just about maybe 18 months ago, we all signed up under a new framework agreement about how we'd work together and progress. There's an overarching kind of high-level strategy called Athletics Unified. So we're all kind of bought up and signed up into that, and we work pretty well. And again, listen, I've been on the other side. I was obviously CEO at Scottish Athletics and went through all the difficulties, if we go back 3-4 years in terms of relationships. So where we are now, there's always bumps in the road, but it's night and day compared to where we were 3 years ago.
Sure. Yeah, I first started going over about 2005 and watched UK Athletics develop a couple generations of athletes. I thought the events that you guys did were fantastic. I hit all your indoor meetings and then your outdoor, and Ian Stewart would bring me over, and so I got to see a little bit of, but I wanted to see how you guys did it and why it worked. and also the relationship with BBC I was fascinated with. And as we've talked about ebb and flow, I watched, I believe, one of your predecessors, Niels de Vos. Now, was Niels in charge of British athletics or UK athletics? How did
this is? I guess this is another complication or area that people get confused around. We are UK Athletics, United Kingdom Athletics. So that's what we are. The governing body is UK Athletics. British Athletics, and you can see that I'm wearing it on my logo, aren't I? So there, yeah, British Athletics is the brand name for UK Athletics.
Got it. Okay, that you've just helped me clear up one of my big questions, because I'm fascinated with that, and I'm trying to appreciate the challenges. So within countries, so there's Welsh national records, Scottish national records, English national records, and then there'd be considered UK or British records.
Yeah, they'd be UK records. People, again, even I find myself doing it sometimes. We kind of use UK records, British records interchangeably. The right phrase are UK records, because that takes in Great Britain, takes in Scotland, England, and Wales. The United Kingdom includes Northern Ireland as well. So it's United Kingdom records, and we should refer to UK, and it is one of the areas that Ian and I and the board are looking at just now in terms of. It is a little bit confusing. There's also two websites. British Athletics is set up around kind of high-end performance and major events. UK Athletics is the kind of corporate entity of that, but it's confusing. Even as discussing it now, Larry, for me, just reinforces that more, that it is confusing to people. So I think over the next 12 months, you'll probably see some changes around, is it British Athletics, UK Athletics? What does that brand look like? How do we brand up the team, which is the athletes and the coaches around that? So you'll probably see some movement in that area over the next 12 months, I suggest.
You and Ian Beattie, from my viewpoint across the pond, and I'm not trying to pat you on the back, but I am. In my view, you guys helped save UK athletics. And it wasn't that people like Joe Coates and her group, there was nothing bad. It's just perhaps they weren't the right people. And I know you got to be careful in how you talk about that, but I'm going to give you a generalization and let you talk about that so you don't get yourself in trouble. I have found that in observing federations, it can be a real challenge, because I've watched U.S. federations do this as well, is they decide, and running brands, they decide they need someone to shake it up. So they bring someone in from another industry. The problem is that person doesn't know squat about running or track and field. Do you feel that has played a part in the challenges that UK athletics had over the last 4 years?
Listen, I'm not going to talk ill of my predecessors, and yes, Ian and I have come in to look forward, and that's the approach we've taken. But I think, just to cover kind of some of that off, I think, where we are now is we've got a chair who's from the sport and understands it. Ian himself, you'll be aware, he's a runner. He's a race director. He coaches some endurance athletes, and he was on the board of Scottish. He led Scottish Athletics for 9.5 years. Prior to that, he was on the board at Sport Scotland as vice chair, and he's been vice chair of a big mental health charity in Scotland as well. So he's very much engrossed within the sport. He loves the sport. He's a fan of the sport, but he can separate kind of being a fan to running the business. But he gets it. And listen, Ian and I, we're not experts in high performance athletics. There's people that are paid to do that, and that's their expertise. But we get the system, I guess, in terms of how to try and develop a system, and how to, we did it within Scottish Athletics, working very closely with our clubs and our athletes and coaches and officials and event organisers, and bringing that together. And I guess he's taken that kind of philosophy into UK, and it is different. The organisation is different from being in one of the home countries, different responsibilities. But Ian has a lot of athletics knowledge, and He has been working with the board to make sure the board has that knowledge around the table now, and there was some natural changes taking place anyway recently. So Manuel O'Connor, former middle distance athlete, Wendy Sly, who you'll remember from your shows, of course. Was that 84? It's 84, wasn't it? Silver medalist there in the old Zola Decker-Slaney fiasco. So they're now on the board and adding great knowledge as well in there, along with a number of others. So, and then again, when you look at, I guess if you look at the core positions of chair, I guess, and board, chief exec, events leads, kind of into the kind of performance area, you need to make sure you've got the right expertise across those core areas within athletics, and then you surround yourself, I guess, by experts in other areas, whether that's commercial or business and things like that. So, Ian's, I'm interim. You're aware of that. Ian's in, and Ian will want to be in and do his 2 terms, assuming everybody wants him to do 2 terms of 4 years. So he'll be in hopefully through to 2029. And he'll be absolutely committed to make sure that UK athletics supports what it's supposed to do, which is ultimately it's about athletes, it's about the coaches, it's about people. We talk about athletics being a people game. It's about making sure we're supporting people in the areas that we're responsible for, and working with the home nations to make sure that they're working and supporting within the areas that they're responsible for as well. So Ian's come in. He wants to make sure we improve our support to athletes and coaches. He wants to make sure we improve that support around our wider coach development, officials development. He wants to make sure we put on great events at UK athletics at UK level up to international level. So one of the things we did, the first conversation Ian and I had, was how do we get Cherry Alexander back to UK athletics? He's one of the best in the business around events. And we did that. I'm delighted we got Cherry back on board. So, and again, it's, we've got some gaps around the performance area, so we're well aware we need to bring in the right people around performance. But things are certainly, have picked up a little bit. We've renegotiated the BBC deal. Delighted with our colleagues at the BBC who've been very helpful. So that was a priority in December and January to try and get that done before last weekend's Indoor Grand Prix in Birmingham. We managed to do that. So, I think, but going back to your point, Larry, I think it's key that you have the core athletics knowledge across the business and the organisation, but you also need to make sure you've got the right people around you in terms of, whether it's commercial, finance, whatever it is, to make sure that we are doing the right things and we're not stuck in always in an athletics bubble. Not saying there's anything wrong with that, but you do need to look outward sometimes.
So back in the 90s, Rolling Stone magazine did an ad campaign that said perception is reality. And I think you are the poster child for that at UK Athletics. And what I mean by that is that the first thing that was impressive was bringing in Cherry Alexander. And I thought that really meant a lot. The second thing was you guys talked from the very beginning, actually from your first presser, about how important BBC was. And I'm very happy to see you. I actually watched the BBC broadcast of the Munro meet. I got it off YouTube. And again, it was brilliant as always. And that's really, really important. But there's a difference with fans in the UK as opposed to the US. There are obviously track fans here who watch every meet and, go from Flow Track to Runner Space to YouTube to cover stuff. But when I would go to meets in the UK and I'd sit in the stands and talk to people, they were sports fans who really got into track and field. And it was, there was at the time, it was an older demographic, but you also bring young people too. First of all, why is terrestrial TV so important for you in the UK? Why is BBC so important for you?
BBC, and again, I remember speaking to Rob Horton at the BBC and back in November, December about this, and I think it's got such a wide appeal beyond. It's important that we get athletics out to the athletics community, the fans, the immediate fans, the hardcore fans, because that's they're significant and they are the sport ultimately. But it's so important that we transcend the athletics community into the wider public consciousness. And for me, that's where the BBC do a great job, and they are working very hard, as all production agents are, to bring to evolve and look at the digital kind of presence and how they communicate beyond just what we call linear TV, which is kind of BBC One, BBC Two across here. So they're looking and having to evolve, and they're having to keep up pace with everyone else, because you mentioned YouTube already. There's other broadcasters who are always evolving, adapting. But there's a long history of the BBC and sport and the sport of athletics in the UK, and we want to make sure that we are working in partnership with the BBC, and we're evolving and again transcending beyond our athletics community without ignoring them. Absolutely. But if you take if I look at last summer, the British Championships went out on YouTube through the British Athletics streaming, and it probably had several tens of thousands of viewers over that weekend. If we get a really good meet, an Olympic trials, World Championship trials, the BBC viewing figures on linear, if you take the two Diamond Leagues last year, they were 1.1 and 1.4 million. If we've been working with the BBC, we want to improve that. We want that figure, in May to be nearer 2 million. That's hugely important. But again, you look at, last weekend, we went out through BBC, and then we linked in through World Athletics. That went out to 70 countries last weekend from Birmingham. So it's important we are streaming out, to the world as well. But again, it's all part of the business at the same time as well, because you want more people to be interested in the sport of athletics. And I'll come back to the traditions of the sport in the UK, because it's not just track and field. We're founded on a basically a cross-country basis, and there's a massive off-track endurance community within the UK, and so it's more than track and field in the UK. And our fans, again, they cross between track and field into cross-country and other elements. But from a business perspective, coming back to the BBC, our commercial partners who want to invest in UK athletics, they want to be on the BBC because they want their products to be shown, as far and wide as possible. So, being on the BBC absolutely helps with that. But it's probably more important that, we are the number one Olympic sport in the UK. And it's important we hold that position, and that as many people across the UK get to watch great athletics meets.
There has been you've got some tremendous athletes. Keely Hodgkinson this last weekend, that was fantastic. Running the fastest 800 meters by a woman in 2 decades, and her opening for the season. So pretty impressive. And she seems quite popular over there. And obviously Laura Muir and Gemma Reekie. You've developed a whole group of Scottish stars. You've got Jake Whiteman, Neil Gorey, and Josh Kerr. And you're developing that next generation of stars. Is that part of the responsibility of UK athletics? Or do you see your responsibility as more than bringing in medals? How do you define your responsibilities?
I think that the collective responsibility between UK athletics and the forum countries is to ensure we are trying to grow the sport in terms of the number of people participating, whether that's in youngsters coming into the sport, predominantly into track and field and cross country, or whether that's, adults coming in at a later stage into kind of recreational social running programs. We have a joint responsibility to do that. It's hugely important. I mean, if we look at, you've mentioned a number of stars, but probably like all countries, we have suffered massively, from the pandemic, So figures are down 30% in terms of participation, if you take 2019 figures to where we are now. And again, if you look at some of the event trends in the UK as well, they're not always great. We've got stars, but we're going to have to work really hard around how do we support and how do the home nations support the development of clubs? How do we develop coaches more, particularly in technical events? Because we've got a great running tradition and sprinting tradition in the UK, but we haven't got, we haven't invested enough time in throws and in jumps per se. And, there are challenges around facility access in some of these areas as well. So there's a lot of work to do, and we're far from perfect. But what we need to do is make sure that we create that pathway for the talented athletes and their coaches to progress through. And we always talk about that that junior to senior transition. That's such an important area. So the home countries are investing heavily in that kind of that 15 to 18-year-old space. British Athletics, I'm saying British Athletics, UK Athletics, British Athletics, we have the Futures Academy, which looks at that top end of the talent and how do we help them into the senior transition. And then we're very fortunate in the UK to be supported by lottery funding through UK Sport. So there's a significant amount of money looks into kind of podium athletes and podium potential athletes. So we need to make sure that system's connected. So when we do have those green shoots coming through, that they're given every opportunity to transition up into the senior ranks. Then when they're in the senior ranks, how do we help them make finals? Whether that's at European or World Olympic level. And then how do we turn that into medals and improve that kind of transition of finalists into medalists? And same on the para side. And we're very fortunate in the UK that we treat athletes as athletes. If you're an able-bodied athlete, you're an athlete. If you're a para athlete, you're an athlete. And the funding that comes in from UK Sport is equal in that sense. Slightly different amounts, but they're treated equally in many respects. And it's important that we develop the system for able-bodied athletes as well as para. So we're constantly looking at how we can make it better. I would say we're far from perfect, but we do invest and we are working hard to try and address any weaknesses we do have in the system just now.
What will be the meets that UK Athletics will host this summer? Will there be 2 Diamond League meets, or how is that? Where are you at with that right now?
No, we are at 1 Diamond League. That's where we are. Okay. But we've been working with World Athletics and European Athletics around there. I don't know if you saw the DNA meet, Dynamic New Athletics, which was quite interesting indoors. So we're looking, I think the global calendar is changing now. You've got the Continental Tour meets, gold, silver, bronze level. And there's world ranking points attributed to that. So Cherry and I have spent a lot of time just sitting down looking at the plans. So we want to make sure that athletes in the UK have at least 4 or 5 real opportunities to gain world ranking points before they need to travel to Europe or wherever else for other meets. It's fine if you mentioned some of the name, if you're a Dean Asher Smith, Laura Muir, Keeley, etc. You're going to get into the Diamond League circuit. But there are a whole load of athletes that sit just below that who don't have the opportunities, and it's difficult. So as a federation, UK Athletics have a duty to make sure those athletes are given opportunities in the UK. Now, whether that's UK delivering events or whether that's UK working with partners to deliver events, I don't mind how we do it. So this year's pretty taken up. It's a busy year. So we've got the Diamond League on May the 21st. We've got the UK Championships at the end of June. Then we're into Eugene, which we're really looking forward to. Then a number of athletes will come back and take part in the Commonwealth Games. Then there's a European Championships in Munich. So that's on the Olympic side. We are looking at the Paralympic side as well around what do we do given the World Paras has been cancelled or postponed is the phrase they're using. So can we produce an international match or something of relevance for our para athletes towards that August time as well? So it's hugely busy this year. So I guess where Cherry and I are looking at, this calendar is pretty much set for 22. Where can we go for 23? So where I'd like us to get to is the UK, not just necessarily UK Athletics, is delivering a top level, one of the best Diamond Leagues, at least 1 Continental Tour Gold meet outdoors, possibly 2 if we can do that, 1 or 2 Continental Tour Gold meets indoors, and then looking at where can we position those silver and bronze opportunities on the Continental Tour as well. And it's great because World Athletics are allowing us to look at event-specific meets. So if we're just looking at, middle distance or endurance or throws, jumps, sprints. So there are elements of certain meets that we can attribute world ranking points to as well by the looks of it. So again, we're looking at is it worthwhile putting together UK event-specific series? So getting the best jumpers together, on semi-regular occasions, 3 or 4 meets. Same with throws, same with sprints. We do it already with the British Milers Club in many respects, and there's the wonderful night of the 10Ks and things like that. The Ben Pochi puts on. So some really good meets in there already. So we don't need to recreate new ones where we don't need to. So I guess that offering for the UK will be built on UK championships, event-specific events where we can. Then we're into bronze and silver meets, working with partners around that, and then looking at Continental Tour Gold meets, outdoor, indoor, and the Diamond League. So I guess that's probably where we'll be. There's still a lot of work to do in that, Larry. But that's probably where we'll be for 2023. But it comes back to UK's role is to support the athletes and their coaches, and there's others round about that. But what can we do to provide better opportunities for Olympic athletes and Paralympic athletes in the UK?
In the past, BBC has televised, I believe, 5 to 7 events during the year. And it seemed to me as an observer that in those years between about 2013 and 2017, the relationship was kind of challenging, and BBC was looking at other places. You now have 4 events that they're putting on BBC?
Yep. So 4 events for this year. So there's the 2 indoor meets that we have said, the World Indoor Tour last week in Birmingham. We've got the British Championships this weekend, which I'm assuming might be talking about last weekend by the time this goes out, of course. And then we've got the Diamond League on May the 21st, and then the UK Championships at the end of June as well. So that's for 2022. Obviously, they're going to be streaming, Eugene World Championships. They'll be streaming Commonwealth Games and European Championships as well. So there'll be a lot of athletics going out to the UK audience this summer. And then what we're doing is, we've agreed in the summer to start looking at what does 2023 look like and beyond. And obviously we'll have a clearer plan on what we want to deliver for UK athletes to support them. And it's just how we can stream. So again, is it BBC One, BBC Two, or what can we put through digital? Are there other opportunities to put more through digital that's not the traditional meets? So if we're looking at event-specific series and things like that, or other continental tour meets, can they be streamed, using the BBC channels, or are there other opportunities elsewhere to do that as well? So it's all in the mix just now. But obviously, Ian and I came into our roles respectively, end of October, with no BBC deal. So to come into the indoor season with a BBC agreement for 2022 for the 4 events is a major step forward. And they want to broadcast athletics. They love it. But as the UK sports calendar is becoming busier and busier. We've got, I think it's next summer. Is it next summer? You've got the Women's World Cup, and they're streaming a lot more around women's football, women's rugby, and other sports as well, which is great. It's great for sports fans. But it becomes more challenging for athletics, and how do we stay relevant? And, we've been talking to the BBC about how can we actually mix up a little bit around our event presentation. So can we interview athletes in between jumps and throws? And, can we get a little bit more interaction for the audience rather than just the traditional, we'll film the meet, we'll update them on the performance as we go, and we'll interview them after the event. Can we start to change it up a little bit? So these are all the types of things of how do you make it that little bit more interesting? How do you connect the athlete? How do you connect the athlete to the audience as well? So these are all things we want to improve on and at least attempt to do.
As you build interest and you build an audience on BBC, you're going to get more interest from sponsors. And in the past, you've had such far-ranging sponsors as Aviva, Adidas. You now have Nike. Who is managing your sponsorship? Are you looking to an outside agency as you did in the past with Fast Track, or is that in-house right now?
I think the Fast Track were fantastic what they did. I think that era is probably past us by now. We work in-house around commercial partnerships, but we also work with external agencies to help us bring those to the table. So it's a combined approach now. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Being back on the BBC provides us with some more opportunities around those commercial partners to chat more. But we've got a couple of great partners just now with Nike and Muller, and we've got a number of VIK partners as well. We've just partnered up with the Daily Mile, and Daily Mile are trying to break into the USA. That's, don't know if your audience will be familiar with that, Larry, but that's very much about getting kids active every day, running for 15 minutes. So, walk, jog, run 15 minutes a day in the school curriculum time. It's ultimately a kind of physical, mental health initiative for kids, but actually for the sport of athletics, if kids are running every day, they can only be a good thing for our sport. So we're working with the Daily Mile. It's actually ex-UK GB international athlete John Mayock, who you may remember. John is the director of sport in EOS, and they support the Daily Mile. So I know Daily Mile are speaking to World Athletics just now, and they're speaking to your colleagues in the US about how they can get the program going. So again, we've got some great partnerships with the likes of Daily Mile and one or two others as well. So, but Munro and Nike are our main commercial partners at this point in time. So, yeah.
What's the most difficult part of your job?
Which part? Do you know what? I think Ian and I come into this. There is great confusion in the UK around what's the role of UK athletics, what's the role of the home countries, and where does that joined up piece start and finish. And I think there's always been a lot of uncertainty amongst, it's a bit like with the chat about UK athletics and British athletics. It's in effect the same thing. And it causes confusion. So these are types of things. So we're spending a lot of time just now just trying to be very clear on where we see the value that UK athletics can add and where its roles and responsibilities are and where that of England athletics and the other home nations are. And I think, just need to be very clear on what we're all trying to do. And we're all funded differently. We receive public funding through UK Sport for the World Class Performance Programme. It's ring fenced. It can only be spent on the World Class Performance Programme. And then we're looking at event income and commercial income. That's our three main avenues for income into UK athletics, whereas the home countries have membership income from individual athletes, from clubs. They have devolved government funding that comes into them as well. And they can bring in their own kind of commercial partners around some of their work as well. So the funding models are completely different between a home country and UK athletics. And again, I don't think it's clear, in terms of that. So people always assume that if they're a member of, let's say, an English club, that they're a member of UK athletics. That's not true. That jurisdiction, if you want to use that word, sits with the home country. And UK athletics deals with areas that we've spoken about, already in terms of supporting athletes and coaches, the World Class Programme, GB teams, putting on events. And yes, we have the rules and clean athletics safeguarding as our responsibilities UK wide, but they are different. But we are working together, and ultimately UK athletics wants the sport in the UK to be very, very successful and wants to support home country partners in their work as well. So the challenges probably are just, those areas of responsibility and confusion or uncertainty around roles, responsibilities, and some of the conversations you have with people. It might be a home country matter, but they think it's a UK matter and things like that. So we just need to be very clear. And that probably comes down to where Ian and I want to really improve things is how do we better support athletes and coaches and officials within the UK athletics context, but how do we communicate far better to the sport? And then how do we, because I think, where we've probably not been as great as we can be over the last few years is around just general communication on what are we doing as UK athletics, what are the home countries doing within their respective territories, and then how do we better support athletes and coaches within our programs at, the world-class level, and focusing on the athlete and the coaches as the heartbeat of that, and remembering that we are here. We are very fortunate. I'm very fortunate to be employed in the sport of athletics. It's wonderful. Listen, it's not easy. It's challenging because you're dealing with 250,000 people involved in the sport with different opinions, and that's challenging. But ultimately, we're here to provide support to the sport and provide that leadership around that as well. So there's a few basics that UK need to get right, and one of those is how we communicate. The other bit is how we connect to the wider audience, of fans that aren't necessarily just the hardcore athletics members. So how do we do that? How do we take, a Dina Asher-Smith, a Katrina Johnson-Thompson, Keely, Laura Muir, Josh Kerr, all the athletes you've mentioned, how do we take them and put them into public consciousness? And it's not just about, talking about times, heights, and distances. It's about, tell us about your life. Tell us about what you're passionate about. What kind of social causes are you passionate about? And let's give you a platform to talk about them. That's where we add value to athletes as well as supporting them with our kind of costs of training camps or medical support and things like that. It's, how do we make them, brands within the UK? Because, we had some really good performances in the Olympics. And yes, we kind of fell short of our medal target by a fraction. But how do you take a Keely Hodgkinson, a Josh Kerr, a Gemma Reekie, and how do you elevate them really up into household names in the UK? Dina is already in there, KJT's in there already, Laura's there to a point as well. They transcend athletics as people, but the athletes coming through, how do we help them tell their story, and how do we make, people walking down the street on the other side of the road point across and go, oh wow, look at that, there's Keely Hodgkinson, Olympic silver medalist, 155 as a 19-year-old. Wow. she's in my town or city. And there's a lot of work that we could do more as UK Athletics to help athletes in that. But coming back to basics, before we get there, we need to make sure we improve our communication to the sport on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. And that includes, transparency around decision making, whether that's board decisions, executive team decisions within the World Class Performance Programme, around selection. And we need to just be far more honest around, any decisions we make and why we made them, and have the confidence to justify them, rather than worry about, we can't talk about it because, we might, people won't agree with it. We're there to make decisions, and hopefully the majority agree with them, and some will not agree with them. And that's the business we're in sometimes, unfortunately.
Sure. Two observations I had. One, about a year and a half ago, perhaps a little longer, you guys, British Athletics, the folks in charge, let go one of the finest communications teams in the world. Your group at Meets made it possible for us to cover the three-ring circus that is a Diamond League meet or a British Championships. And I was going to both of them, and pretty much cleared out some really great people. And then the other one was the lottery, which I find fascinating. And I think it's pretty awesome the way you guys do it. But this year, Sarah Symington, literally the day before she left, they announced some of the people. And I know it was a challenge because of the pandemic, but there were some people that were pretty obvious that are quite talented and are coming up in your sport. And from this guy across the pond, deserve support. Are you and Mr. Beattie going to look at the lottery, and revisit that, or are you going to wait till next year?
So I'll answer your first point, Larry, around comms. I absolutely agree that whether it's day-to-day communication or communication events is absolutely key. That is really top notch. And I guess I've already brought Liz Birchall, for example, back into the weekly conversations with the senior management team, back onto that group, because for me, your head of communications should know everything, should know more than I know that's going on in the sport. And I was very fortunate when I was up at Scottish Athletics. There's a chap called Peter Jardine. I don't know if you've ever met Peter before. Peter had everything planned months in advance and could tell me everything that was going on in the sport. And I would go to Peter to know what's happening, if there's anything I needed to know. And so for me, the head of comms should be in that position. And that's where Liz is back being repositioned in that sense. And yes, the comms around events, the support for the press, the media, for the athletes and coaches is important as well. So we're working really hard around how we do that and what that looks like going forward. The decisions, I think the decision you were referring to was when the funding was removed for the coaches. Is that correct, Larry? Yeah. Again, I'm not going to comment on why that decision was made. I don't actually know why that decision was made, but what I can tell you is in November, we reinstated funding to a number of coaches. In fact, I think we're now funding more coaches than we did before. So we fund on the basis of, for coaches on the Olympic side, that's where there is less money on the Paralympic side, and it's difficult. But on the Olympic side, we fund coaches with medal athletes who get a certain amount of money. Medal zone coaches, medal zone athletes and their coaches. The coaches get a certain amount of funding, and then relay program coaches also get funding as well. So that was reintroduced in November pretty quickly.
You've had a recent coaching discipline issue, I believe. And I'm trying to. I want to characterize this correctly. Raina Ryder, according to what we've read, is it correct to say that UK Athletics spoke to several of the athletes that were under Mr. Ryder's coaching and told them that because of an investigation or issues that you had with Mr. Ryder, that you could no longer support those athletes if they were coached by Mr. Ryder? Is that correct?
I think that statement, we have made that statement publicly. What I will say, I won't talk about a specific case, but
respect.
If there was any allegations, serious allegations made against a coach in the UK,
Mm-hmm.
then a risk assessment would be undertaken and likelihood is it would be suspended. And again,
Okay.
innocent until proven guilty, of course, but they'd be suspended during that investigation phase and any panel hearings that may result. And, they would not be allowed to work with athletes during that time. And that's, in effect, the process we took with the example you've given in the States just now. And, after speaking to US safeguarding, that decision was taken. And we've said that publicly.
With the recent, I respect what the Athletics Integrity Unit does. And in fact, one of my writers just put up that since they were formed, they've busted about 190 situations where athletes were cheating or various situations. I think that a robust drug testing and anti-doping, as you do, is good for the sport. A lot of media, especially that don't follow track and field on a constant basis, just say, well, we're always talking about drugs. And I'm not sure it's that way. What is your take on the recent situation where your 4x100 team will have to forfeit the medals? Obviously, it's very sad for the three who didn't do anything wrong. We've had that over here too. And I remember Michael Johnson had to give up a 4x400 medal, and he was furious, and I saw some comments by Richard Kilty, who I've interviewed and really enjoy. And you feel bad for athletes like that because it's their first global medal. That's the reality of sport, global sport. How do you manage those disappointments and not let it take away from the sport?
Yeah, I think I'm not going to comment on that specific case because we will comment on it, but only once we get the integrity unit's final decision around suspensions, etc. So we'll make a comment as UK Athletics and talk more publicly about that specific case at that point in time. It's obviously gutting for the athletes. You mentioned the three athletes and that, but we'll talk about that more once we get the AIU's final decision on that. So that case is technically still live in that one. But yeah, I mean, what I'll say is that I was, although athletics has always been my sport, I worked in football, soccer, as you would refer to it, Larry, for 7 years. I think, I think we can always improve our doping testing systems, and we're always, you always have these conversations, don't you, over a beer or a glass of wine, comparing, country to country and who does what and how much testing takes place across the globe and all the rest of it. But what I'll say about athletics, I think they test far more than the majority of other sports. And I think because they do that, then ultimately, yes, you're going to have more failings in the sport because the testing is so much stronger. And, when I look at like soccer, my time there, there was very limited testing going on, and I might get myself in trouble for saying it, but I think the sport of athletics is far more organized than many other sports, and therefore we test more. And if you test more and you have a large sport, you're bound to have a few negatives en route, aren't you? So, yes, it's not great. It's not great for the sport. It's not great in your own country when you have a problem like that. When you're trying to sell your sport commercially and all the rest of it, does it impact? Potentially it does impact. But actually, if you look at the positives, it means, our sport is cleaning itself up and is proactive in that approach as well. And I guess, you look at those processes, and even from last weekend, you can see they're completely independent. And my frustration with CAS is that they don't give you any prior warning, and it just lands. And you have to mop up very quickly and deal with it. That type of news the day before a major event is not great. The AIU decision, the 10-year ban for blessing, was again fell between two world tour meets. And again, if you were in control of that, you wouldn't want that to happen. But it shows the independence and the integrity around it all. And therefore, yes, you have to deal with these things en route. It's not great. And would you rather see no, anti-doping violations? Of course, you want to see zero. But it's the reality, and we need to test. And what I will say is we're very fortunate in the UK that we're funded to deliver a clean athletics program. So we spend a lot of time, and we have 2 staff that are employed to deliver the education around our athletes and coaches around clean athletics. And they spend hours. If you're in a program from a teenager, by the time you're late 20s, you'll have had well over 100 hours spent on you around clean athletics education and checking every year and things like that. We have to do a course. Yeah, everyone has to do a course, even if it's a refresher prior to every championship every year. So there's lots of education goes on in the UK, and that's probably where we may be in a more fortunate position than some of our counterparts in other countries across the globe who possibly can't afford to do that. But we're funded to do that in the UK, which is positive. But yeah, a negative test result is not great, and you have to deal with it. And you always have to remember, you have to support everyone involved in that as well, the athletes, the coaches, and it's making sure you wrap around that support as much as we can. And I'm not convinced we've done that well in the past. So it's definitely an area we need to work on as well.
Yeah, I always make the joke that the day before U.S. Olympic trials, I can't remember one where there wasn't a announcement about something that was in the anti-doping realm, and it just would frustrate the heck out of me. I understand on one side that it's about cleaning the sport. I also understand it's how do you balance that with the perception and reality. You've survived 48 minutes with me, Mark, and I'm down to my final question, so thank you. And then you can perhaps go have a pint if that's the way you do it at the end of the day. In doing the research before I spoke with you, you're highly regarded, and people have said that you would make a fine CEO for UK athletics. But I understand you've kind of pulled yourself out of the situation or the consideration at this time. Would you care to address that?
To a point, I guess. Larry, happy to. I withdrew myself from potentially applying for the rollout. I'm originally back at, I think it was late October. Ian and the board asked me if I would step in for 6 months to try and steady the ship. And obviously, I'm very loyal to Ian as my former chair at Scottish Athletics and the board at UK Athletics. I'd only been working at UK Athletics for 8 months, maybe not even 8, about 7 or 8 months. My development director role that I came in to do after being CEO at Scottish Athletics. So I wasn't expected to be in the position. So it wasn't never in my mind to be, I want to be CEO in the immediate future. However, I've enjoyed it. It's tough. Any of these positions are tough, but we've made really good progress in the last 3 or 4 months. And listen, lots more to do. I'm going to say again, far from perfect, but lots to do. And want to give it a go. I just have a very difficult family situation at home with one of my children that we just have to accept, and spend a lot of time talking with my wife, talking with Ian and others around it. The timing just, I think, to be the CEO of one of the major, of the number one Olympic sport and one of the kind of bigger nations in the world, you have to have the capacity to work 24/7, to travel, to do all of that. And I don't think I'd be able to do that justice given my personal situation right just now. I'm very committed to UK athletics, but it's just one of those things. And it's just a timing issue. And, who knows? Who knows? Listen, it might be my only time to, and what I should say as well, Larry, it was never a done deal. It has to be a very fair and open process. And I was well aware coming into interim role, I'd be given an opportunity, which was a great opportunity. But actually, if somebody better had come in anyway, I would have absolutely said, great appointment. But as it is, I'm out this time around. Who knows what the future might hold? That might be my one opportunity, but who knows? We'll see where we go in the future.
Well, Mark, thank you very much. Thank you for this time today. This is Larry Eder with RunBlogRun and our program Socially the Distance. We featured Mark Munro. He's the interim CEO at UK Athletics, and he explained all things UK to us today, and a few Scottish things too. So thank you very much, Mark.
No, thanks, Larry. Cheers.
Hey, sports fans, Larry Eder, RunBlogRun. This is Socialing the Distance. Today we featured Mark Munro. He's the interim CEO of UK Athletics, and what a tough job. And this is your program, Socialing the Distance. Mark headed up Scottish Athletics and then came to UK Athletics about 8 or 9 months before as the head of development. And then Ian Beattie, who took over as the chairman, asked Mark to be the interim CEO. And he's done that now for, I believe, 4 months. They're in the process of looking for a new CEO because Mark will not tender his name in the process. He's decided that he needs to stay close to home at this time in his life, and it's just not the right time, it sounds like. But we covered, it was a far-ranging interview. We covered a lot of space, and I encourage you to listen to it and to take Mark at his word. I think they've done some really good things, bringing Cherry Alexander back, doing the BBC, getting BBC to commit to 4 broadcasts a year and looking at more for 2023. And also dealing with there's a coaching disciplinary issue they've got right now, and they're dealing with some things from AIU. All these things come, nothing stops, and nothing is, nothing comes at an easy pace. When you're the head of one of the top federations, and UK Athletics, I believe, is one of the top 4 athletic federations in the world. And it's been a tremendous growth over the last 20 years. But I think Ian Beattie and Mark Munro have got them back to smooth sailing again. There's a lot of stuff to do, but at least they know what the problems are, and they're trying to remedy them one by one. So Mark Munro's done a very fine job. It was a fun interview, and I thank Mark for his time. I thank Mike Deering, our production manager, for managing Socialing the Distance. Stay safe, stay warm, and please vaccinate. Talk to you soon. Bye now.